My name is Farrukh Iqbal. I'm the director of the World Bank's regional office for the GCC countries, based in Riyadh. One of the advantages of being based in Riyadh is that I'm able to participate in events like this one, organized by MILE. I would like to thank MILE for having invited me to this course. It has given me an excellent opportunity to learn a bit more about public sector performance and to network with many people here. Given the academic nature of this event, let me start by specifying the learning objectives of my brief talk this evening. There are 4 learning objectives that I wish to pursue. First, I will talk a little bit about the meaning of public sector performance and ways to measure this. Second, I will select one aspect of public sector performance, namely budget management or public financial management, and provide a description of a tool that has been developed to measure and compare PFM performance. Third, I will discuss findings from a recent application of this tool to the Middle East and North Africa MENA region. Fourth, I will go beyond the measurements to consider a few areas of policy interest, providing institutional detail and texture as needed. So let me start with the first objective. What does it mean to talk about public sector performance, and how might one go about measuring it? In the private sector, performance is reasonably well understood and is commonly measured in terms of profits, returns to equity, and similar financial measures. In the public sector, however, where no clear financial bottom line exists, nor is there a concept of profit maximization, it is more challenging to define good performance. One way is to measure performance in terms of outcomes. So a health ministry's performance, for example, could be judged over time in terms of improvements in such outcome measures as infant mortality or life expectancy. Similarly, the performance of a Ministry of Education could be measured in terms of enrollment rates, dropout rates, or measures of education quality. Now, one major issue with this way of measuring performance is what is known in the evaluation literature as the attribution problem. It is not necessary that health improvements come about only because of the performance of health ministries. Think of the contribution of clean water supplies, for example. Similarly with education. Other factors can also be involved, and it is not straightforward to determine how much of improvement is due to which factor and which agency. Another way to measure public sector performance is in terms of outputs. Thus, a ministry's performance could be judged in terms of the number of health clinics or schools built, or doctors and teachers hired and deployed, and so on. In several countries, departments of various public sector agencies are required to sign contracts at the beginning of their budget year, stating the volume of outputs that they will deliver. Now, different parts of this course will introduce you to other aspects of public sector performance and measurement. For now, I want to pick a subset of public sector performance and discuss that in some detail. The subset I'm referring to is the budget process, or Public Financial Management, PFM. In most developing countries, government spending accounts for a large fraction of total output. The annual budget has substantial fiscal and output implications. So it makes sense to look at systems that govern the use of public money. There are 2 other reasons why I am devoting my talk to this subset of public sector performance. First, by now, much comparative information has been collected on this, and it is possible to meaningfully compare performance across countries and sometimes for the same country over time. Second, the World Bank has had a lot to do with the collection of the global database on PFM. Now, the World Bank and several other international development agencies have been collaborating in recent years recent decades actually, to develop this tool to evaluate how countries channel public financial resources towards end users. This is known as the Public Expenditure and Financial Accountability, or PIFA assessment. A good public financial management system is essential for the implementation of policies and the achievement of development objectives. The PIFA tool looks at 6 critical dimensions of PFM system performance. These are credibility of the budget. In other words, is the budget realistic and based on good estimates of revenue and spending needs? Comprehensiveness and transparency. In other words, does the budget cover most sources of public spending, and is budget information accessible to the legislature and the public? Policy-based budgeting. In other words, is the budget linked to national policy goals? Predictability and control in budget execution. Is the budget implemented in an orderly, predictable manner? Are there arrangements for the exercise of control and stewardship over public funds? Accounting, recording, and reporting. Are adequate records kept, maintained, disseminated to meet decision-making, control, management, and reporting purposes? And finally, external scrutiny and audit. Are there arrangements for the scrutiny of public finances and follow-up? Each of these 6 parts of the budget cycle is subdivided to smaller parts, and a total of 28 items for evaluation are assembled in the PIFA tool. Evaluators score each of these items and then calculate the category scores. These can then be averaged into a composite score. Once the scores are available, the country's PFM system can be compared to other countries or even to itself over time if there has been a previous PIFA assessment. Now, this is the tool that the World Bank and the IMF use to assess public financial management. The tool is actually available to all. Countries and ministries can download the questionnaires for each of the 28 categories and do it on a self-evaluation basis. Of course, it requires a certain amount of expertise to do the scoring, because you need to have comparative information about how different countries do different types of budget process. Now, let me talk a little bit about the application of PIFA to MENA. PIFA evaluations have been done at least once in recent years in the following 6 Arab countries: Iraq, Jordan, Morocco, Syria, Tunisia, the West Bank, and Yemen. These are all classified by the World Bank as lower middle income countries. Results from these evaluations can be compared to the averages for 19 lower middle income countries from the rest of the world. Right. This comparison shows that MENA PIFA scores are about the same as those of comparators in all categories combined. In one category, that of accounting, reporting, and recording, MENA scores a little higher than the comparators. In 2 categories, namely credibility of the budget and comprehensiveness, MENA scores a little lower. The composite scores based on all 6 budget process categories are about the same. Now, the best ranked countries in MENA, according to this scoring process, are Morocco and Jordan. Their average composite scores are 2.87. That's like a B. The worst are West Bank and Iraq, with scores of 1.5. That's like a C-. Now, to understand these ratings, it's really important to have context and institutional detail. So this is what I will do next. I will select 8 issues for discussion. They help give a flavor of the policy challenges faced in improving PFM performance. Now, this does not exhaust the number of issues that could be discussed, of course, but it is all we can do in the time available. So first, credibility of the budget. What is needed to make budgets credible? 3 practices have been identified as being associated with high budget credibility. First, the existence of good macro-fiscal data and analytical capacity to assess revenue and expenditure trends and needs. Second, the willingness and ability to undertake medium-term expenditure planning and commit to forward estimates of budget needs. And third, the integration of capital and current budgets. What is the status of these practices in MENA? Of course, the status varies from country to country. For our present purposes, we will rely on general observations for the region as a whole, based on the 7 countries for which we have direct information. Macro-fiscal analytical capacity. On average, both the quality of fiscal data and analytical capacity to provide advice are on the low side in the MENA region. In recent years, Jordan, Egypt, Lebanon, Yemen have started to develop some capacity in the Ministry of Finance to do macro-fiscal work. In general, it is difficult to attract skilled staff to such functions with prevailing civil service pay and benefits packages. Oftentimes, these skills are available in central banks where compensation packages are better. Medium-term expenditure planning. While a few MENA countries are attempting to make forward estimates and to integrate these with the annual budget process, none has a functioning system at present. For the most part, countries have piloted such estimates in a few sectors. In many countries, the ministries of finance remain suspicious of these initiatives, feeling that they would lose some of the clout that they presently exercise through their control of the annual budget process. The third point, integration of capital in current budgets. Well, most MENA countries operate a dual budget system, with different ministries being responsible for the capital and current budgets. Usually, a planning ministry or equivalent manages the capital budget process, and the finance ministry manages the current budget process. Inevitably, inconsistencies arise and the two budgets are not aligned with each other. It is ironic that the dual budgeting system was inherited from the colonial powers, Britain and France, who have since gone on to a unified budget process. Now let me talk about the comprehensiveness and transparency issues. First, budget coverage. This remains an area of weakness in most MENA countries. Several countries allow ministries and agencies to operate special treasury accounts outside the general budget. Extra budgetary expenditures are common, and sometimes not all revenues are channeled into the central treasury. Powerful sector ministries have incentives to resist the centralization of accounts. This is not so much a technical matter as a political matter. With regard to budget transparency and classification, most countries have adopted the IMF's classification system, or close equivalents. Some countries have also taken steps to reveal more and more details of the budget to the public. So this is generally an area where we see improvement. How about budget execution? I'll talk about two issues, treasury operations and procurement. A well-functioning treasury system can reduce the cost of government operations by minimizing net borrowing costs. Now, while several countries have attempted treasury reforms, especially those aimed at consolidating funds in a single treasury account, there remains much to be done. Powerful sector ministries can thwart the Ministry of Finance agenda, as has happened recently in the last few years in Egypt, for example. Now the issue of procurement. Is public money properly spent? Again, the quality of procurement systems in the region is comparatively weak. It involves fake competition, abuse of contracts, non-transparent tender evaluation arrangements, and frequent use of slicing, which is dividing large contracts into smaller ones to bypass authorization thresholds. Now, reforms often touch on areas of significant corruption. so they are blocked or diverted by powerful interests. Once again, an area not so much of technical difficulty as of political difficulty. Finally, external accountability. How good is the external audit function? External audit provides Parliament with assurance on the adherence to financial laws and value for money in public spending. It is essential for maintaining discipline on the executive branch. This is subject to many weaknesses in the region, reflecting perhaps the weakness of Parliament relative to the executive branch that has been a characteristic of the region for many years. Examples: activities of supreme audit organizations are shrouded in secrecy, reports are unavailable to the public or put out with long delays. In some countries, the audit bodies report to the President or the King rather than to Parliament. Let me conclude with a few general observations about the role of the FIFA tool or assessment. I'll start with two caveats. First, the FIFA tool does not actually measure the factors that influence performance, such as the legal framework or existing capacities in the government. It just focuses on the operational elements of key items of the PFM system, rather than the inputs that enable the PFM system to achieve a certain level of performance. Second, the tool does not actually involve any fiscal or expenditure policy analysis. It does not comment on whether fiscal policy is sustainable, whether expenditures incurred through the budget have desired effects on reducing poverty or some other national goal. This, of course, would require detailed data analysis and utilization of country-specific indicators. However, we do know that good PFM systems are generally associated with good public sector performance. So the FIFA tool and the associated contextual analysis are useful in that they help identify areas for improvement of PFM systems. Let me stop there